Don't you know what you have done? Realize that you're taking someone's possession. You're taking lives and causing so much pain to others. For your hurt, they're not to blame. I can understand you call yourself a man with a gun in your hand, killing people in the land.
How's it going, everybody? This is Soul Time Productions. Today I got a very special video for y'all, man. So we're gonna be talking about the Crip and Blood gang sets found in Orange County, right? For those that don't know, Orange County had its share of different racial gangs, right? Today you could find a lot of Asian Crip gangs, a lot of Asian Blood gangs that beef it with Mexican gangs, right? But in the late 80s, early 90s, there was also a big African American gang presence in Orange County. I spoke to many of my older homies, and they've told me stories, right? Stories about people getting shot in their hood that were from Crip gangs, right? I've heard stories of Townsend being mostly African American back in the late 80s, right? So we're going to be talking about some of the Crip gangs that were found in Orange County, Santa Ana, Anaheim, Tustin area, right? I've tried to look for a lot of the Blood gangs, but it's very hard to find that information. So if anybody knows of anybody that knows a little bit about that history, please leave it in my comment section. So let's get to it, right? So Baldomero Johnny Diaz, who was convicted of 6 counts of attempted murder, is arrested in Manatee. Since his escape, he had been arrested twice under false identities and on other charges. A one-time Santa Ana gang member who escaped juvenile hall while awaiting sentencing for a violent drive-by shooting was captured Wednesday after eluding authorities for 20 years. Baldomero Johnny Diaz, 36, allegedly dodged the police by assuming new identities and manipulating his fingerprints so his prints couldn't be traced. Authorities said Diaz avoided detection even though he was arrested twice during his alleged run from the law. Diaz was arrested at his Manatee home and was scheduled to be turned over to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation today to begin serving a prison term. His case dates back to October 1989 when he was 17 years old, a member of a street gang named as the Little Hood Crips. At a party in Santa Ana, authorities said Diaz and other Crips argued with members of the Baby Shelly Street Bloods, which is one of the blood gangs in Santa Ana, right? Later, authorities said Diaz was at the wheel of a stolen car when 17 shots were fired at the Bloods, injuring 6 of them. Diaz and 4 other gang members were prosecuted in the drive-by shooting. Diaz was tried as an adult and convicted in August 1990 of 6 felony counts of attempted murder with premeditation and deliberation. A month later, Diaz escaped juvenile hall in Orange by crawling through a hole in a fence and scaling a second fence. A second juvenile in custody for unrelated crimes escaped with him but was later captured. His defense attorney told The Times in 1990 that his client was absolutely depressed and confused by the verdict because he had cooperated fully with the police. Orange County prosecutors began investigating Diaz's whereabouts last month after learning he had been using several false names, birth dates, and social security numbers, and had obtained Department of Motor Vehicle IDs using this false information. Diaz had been arrested in 2001 and prosecuted for prostitution in San Diego County under the name Jaime Gonzalez. In 2006, he was prosecuted for driving under the influence in San Diego County under the name Edgar Francisco Gonzalez. And for those that don't know, a lot of Mexican teens back in those days would claim Crip gangs too. You know, a lot of raza was part of these Blood and Crip gangs. You know, which is also a trip. Anybody has more information on things like this, man, please hit me up. There was also the Watergate Crips. So the Watergate Crips are primarily an African American criminal street gang located on the west side in Hawthorne and Orange County, California. The Watergate Crips originated during the 1980s in the city of Hawthorne, near Imperial Highway between Crenshaw Boulevard and Van Ness Boulevard. The Watergate Crips are part of a Rolling 100 Crips, which consists of gangs in Los Angeles County and Hawthorne. Their cliques consist of the 116th Street and the 117th Street, as well as the 119th Street. Casimir Avenue is a residential street which runs through the heart of their neighborhood. The Watergate Crips are one of the few Crip gangs in Hawthorne, along with the 115th Gangster Crips and the Hawthorne Thug family, as well as the Acacia Block Hustler Crips. DJ Pooh, American music producer, actor, and writer, was affiliated with the Watergate Crips. He is best known for producing films such as The Wash, Three Strikes, and Friday, as an actor and co-writer. The Santa Ana Orange County chapter of the Watergate Crips are the oldest Crips set located in the city of Santa Ana. They established a name for themselves during the 1990s after being involved in multiple drive-by shootings. Manchester Avenue in Anaheim, approximately 1 mile from Crescent Avenue. Allies and rivals. The Watergate Crips are allies of most gangs under the Rolling 100 Crips, the Neighborhood Crips, such as the Budlong Gangster Crips and the Raymond Avenue Crips, along with the Hard Time Hustler Crips. The Watergate Crips are rivals of the Hawthorne Piru Gang and the Denver Lane Bloods, as well as all Compton Pirus. The city of Hawthorne and the city of Inglewood are neighborhoods bordered by Imperial Highway. This has caused them to feud with Inglewood Bloods, such as the Crenshaw Mafia Gang and the Avenue Piru Gang, along with the Center Park Bloods. The Watergate Crips also known to feud with other Crip gangs under the Neighborhood Crips card, such as the 111 Neighborhood Crips, the 112 Neighborhood Crips, as well as the 115 Neighborhood Crips. In the past, Watergate Crips were locked in a violent feud with the Imperial Village Crips located in the city of Inglewood. The Santa Ana Watergate Crips are rivals of the Baby Shelley Street Bloods and Bamdahl Street Pirus located in Santa Ana. There's the Del Monte Crips, found in Anaheim, widely known as the Del Monte Block Crips or Del Monte Block Gangster Crips, DBC or DBGC. Due to their affiliation with Gangster Crips, they are mostly an African American controlled street gang, located on the west side in Anaheim, California. The Del Monte Block Crips boundaries are Lincoln and Orange Avenue, between Western Avenue and Beach Boulevard. Their name is derived from the Del Monte Drive, which is also their formation street. The Del Monte Block Crips have the distinction of being the only African American street gang in West Anaheim, which is dominated by Mexican American street gangs with ties to the Mexican Mafia. The Del Monte Block Crips are made up of two cliques known as the 3400 Block Trey Foe and the 31 Block Trey 1. In 2013, Marcos Bush, a well-known member of the Del Monte Crips, was accused of shooting a police officer during a traffic stop. The Fullerton officer was shot numerous times in the chest at point-blank range. The officer was able to return fire, shooting the suspect twice in the arm. The dark-colored car sped off with a female passenger later identified as Shani Duhart. However, the officer was wearing a bulletproof vest which saved his life. Bush was later arrested at an apartment in Anaheim. The apartment was located in Anaheim. The arresting officers, who also discovered a semi-automatic handgun in nearby bushes, which tested positive as the same weapon used during the shooting. Duhart was arrested in Riverside, where they also found the dark-colored Pontiac Grand Prix. Duhart is charged with being an accessory to attempted murder. A week later, police arrested a third suspect, Andrew Jones, while driving in Lincoln Avenue in Anaheim, near the territory claimed by the Del Monte Block Crips. Police now believe Jones was the second person in the Grand Prix, not Duhart, who still faced accessory to murder for trying to get rid of the car. Police described Bush and Jones as two of Anaheim's most ruthless gang members. 2 weeks prior to the shooting, Bush was acquitted of all charges of attempted murder against a rival gang member. The Del Monte Block Crips are allies of other gangs affiliated with the Gangster Crips. However, they have no immediate allies and are surrounded by rival Latino gangs such as the Anaheim Folks Gang to the west and Barrio Pobre to the east. Other rivals are the Anaheim Brown Pride, Big Stanton, Eastside Buena Park, and Tears of a Clown Gang. Despite Gangster Crips and Neighborhood Crips being natural enemies since 1970s, the Del Monte Crips feud with the Neighborhood Crips is not as active as those in South Los Angeles, mostly due to distance. For instance, the closest Neighborhood Crips are in the different cities, such as the Watergate Crips in Santa Ana, who migrated from Los Angeles to Orange County. In 2009, members of the Del Monte Crips attended a backyard birthday party at a house in Buena Park when uninvited members of the Barrio Pobre dressed in gang attire with bald heads crashed the party. They provoked a confrontation with the black guests and were greeted with thrown beer bottles from the Del Monte Crips. The party hosts escorted the Hispanic males off the premises, but they vowed to return with violence. Making good on their promise, they returned with a shotgun and shot the teenage party host's stepfather. He died from multiple gunshot wounds to the abdominal area. The suspects then fled. 3 members of the Barrio Pobre were arrested and charged with murder. And, a lot of people won't hear about these things, So, there's also another neighborhood called, it's called Deuce Trey Crips. And these guys are found in Tustin, right? So, Jeff Blair has a thing for remembering names and faces. As a kid, he would study baseball cards and memorize statistics that accompanied his favorite players. It's a skill that has never left him, and it served him well in his years as a member of Tustin's first gang unit in the 1990s. Just as he would commit RBIs and batting averages to memory, Blair studied a 3-ring binder full of snapshots and information on Tustin's most violent gang, the Deuce Trey Crips. He remembered their faces and birthdays. The man sitting next to Blair on a recent Tuesday at the Tustin Police Department was in that binder. Blair remembers his name and birth date. The last time Blair saw the man was in 1998 when he and Lieutenant Todd Bullock arrested him. The former gang member now is married to a school teacher who started a tutoring business and an after-school program. The couple has 4 daughters and a son. "I don't know this guy," said Blair, a lieutenant with Tustin PD. "This is not the Jimmy Rumsey I knew." The Jimmy Rumsey Blair knew had a thing for violence. There wasn't a line he wouldn't cross. After all these years, Rumsey wanted to meet Blair and Bullock, the Tustin gang unit members who never gave him a break. "Under different circumstances," he said. "We had a relationship back then," said Rumsey. "Not a friendship, but an understanding." Parts of Rumsey's story are what some might expect. An angry kid without a father. He started acting out at the age of 11. Rumsey would pick fights, ditch school, and torment his teachers. His single mother worked at a sandwich shop and a pizza parlor, but it wasn't enough to make ends meet. She collected welfare to keep her son and daughter in their small apartment on Mitchell Avenue. "My mom did the best she could, but it was just out of control," he said. Rumsey was kicked out of every school he ever attended, including an alternative school he was expelled from after throwing a book at a teacher's head. He eventually was forced to enroll in a day school for teens, serving sentences at juvenile hall. Members of the Deuce Trey Crips took notice of the kid who seemed fearless and loyal to no one. "I fought most of the guys in the gang," Rumsey said. "That's why they started to accept me." The Deuce Trey Crips would give Rumsey something to be loyal to. "I was so bad and so out of control, I didn't need to do anything to get in," Rumsey said. "They just said, 'You're one of us.' I was all in." Tustin was a different place in the 1990s. The family-oriented community with a small town feel didn't seem a breeding ground for gang violence, but it was. "I took a big interest in gangs because I had grown up in Tustin and I didn't know anything about them," Blair said. Yet, here they were, and they were doing some serious stuff. The Tustin PD gang unit formed in 1996 when gang violence was on the rise. The Deuce Trey Crips Los Wickeds, and the Watergate Crips were among the dozen or so crews active in the city surrounding areas. The Deuce Trey Crips were Tustin born and bred, and they were the first gang Tustin PD set their sights on. In the first month of the gang unit, officers responded to a gang-related robbery, shooting, and vehicle pursuit, among other incidents. Rumsey, the only white kid in all-black gang, often was at the center of the gang violence, but proving that was difficult, Blair said. Jimmy kept capering, but we would never catch him. That's how he earned the name Teflon Jimmy. Nothing would stick. Rumsey, nicknamed Slim Jim by gang members, said he constantly was looking over his shoulder for Blair and Bullock. He told them recently, "Man, we hated you guys, but we respected you." Said Blair, "They respected us because we worked hard. We worked within the rules we had to play by, but we were tenacious." Rumsey said there wasn't a week that went by that he didn't get questioned by Tustin PD. That's because not a week went by that Rumsey wasn't reportedly involved in some kind of crime. Deuce Trey Crips members every day would ride around in Rumsey's 67 Buick looking for rivals to fight. Sometimes altercations involved fists, sometimes weapons. On Sunday morning, Rumsey would sneak off to church with another gang member. They'd hide the weekly services from others in the group. Believe it or not, I was always a believer in God, Rumsey said. I'd be doing what I was doing and then going to church. We didn't tell anyone because we didn't want to get an image that we were weak. Rumsey's faith was not enough to dissuade him from excessive violence. He robbed and assaulted people, committed home invasion robberies, and fired off shots at rival gang members. He kidnapped and tortured people and even tried to kill a rival gang member, but for whatever reason the gun didn't work when he pulled the trigger. When I was in, I was all in, he said. There was nothing I wouldn't do. Rumsey recalls being shot at 5 times, 4 times in Tustin and once in Irvine when a rival gang member fired at Rumsey's car as he was driving down Deerfield Avenue near Culver Drive. In June 1994, his friend took a bullet in the shoulder after an altercation with the Tustin Bloods, but Rumsey came out unscathed. Tustin police arrested a suspect in that case and he is still serving time in prison, Blair said. Between 1995 and 1997, Rumsey also survived a drive-by shooting outside his apartment complex and 2 incidents in which he said rival gangs fired upon his vehicle. Rumsey's enemies finally caught up to him one night in the heart of his gang's turf in Tustin. The night before he got shot, October 3, 1997, Deuce Trey Crips members exchanged words with another Tustin gang near the Santa Ana border, outside Rumsey's home. With his 2 young children sleeping inside, Rumsey convinced his friends to take care of business the next day. On October 4, 1997, the gang was on its way to seek out the rivals, but was intercepted by 2 carloads of Santa Ana-based gang members from a rival Crip gang. The last thing I remember is the gun coming out, then I woke up in the hospital, Rumsey said. Rumsey, 21 at the time, had been shot in the face. The bullet entered through his chin, shattered his jawbone, and stopped just before hitting his spine. That bullet still sits in Rumsey's body today, a reminder of the life that seems a lifetime ago. As he recovered in a hospital bed, bolts in his head and his jaw wired shut, Rumsey plotted and planned his revenge. I wanted to get some justice, he said. I was in that lifestyle that's just what I knew how to do. During his more than month-long stay at the hospital, Rumsey also did a lot of praying. His girlfriend at the time, now his wife, pleaded him to leave the gang and move to Corona. I had a lot of emotions going on and I started to think about my family, he said. I didn't want to end up in jail for the rest of my life. I don't want to be without my kids. But when he finally was discharged, the desire for revenge prevailed over a want to rehabilitate. Several months after being shot in the face, Rumsey again was spending time with the Deuce Trey Crips. On an April evening in 1998, he and his friends filled up on margaritas at a Mexican restaurant in the Inland Empire and left without paying. Rumsey, intoxicated in the back seat, demanded the driver to take him and his friends to Tustin. After mumbling some comment about hating a song on the radio, Rumsey took out his .25 and shot a hole through the stereo. Later that night, Blair and Bullock saw the vehicle speeding on El Camino Real near Tustin East Drive. We didn't even know who was in the car, Blair said. We just pulled them over for speeding. They spotted a bullet hole in the dash and a drunken Rumsey in the back. The passenger opened the glove box to reveal Ramsey's firearm. Teflon Jimmy was no more. Tustin PD arrested Rumsey, and he was convicted for being a member of a criminal street gang in possession of a firearm. He was sentenced to 120 days in Orange County Men's Central Jail. That was the last time Blair and Bullock saw or heard of Rumsey. On March 10, Blair received an email with an eye-catchy subject, Tustin Gang Survivor. A childhood friend of Rumsey sent him the Behind the Badge OC story about Tustin's first gang unit, and it prompted Rumsey to reach out. I was shocked when the email came through, Blair said. There was a photo of Teflon Jimmy, a proud father at his daughter's high school graduation. The family flashed the shaka because his daughter was off to the University of Hawaii with a $60,000 scholarship. He wrote Blair about his son making honor roll, how his two daughters graduated high school with honors, and his eldest daughter's plans to become an accountant. Rumsey wrote he wanted to meet Blair and Bullock and talk about how he could get back to the community he took so much from. Rumsey wrote, Tustin will always have a special place in my heart. Go figure. So, as you can see, just because you're on the wrong road now doesn't mean you can't get out of it. It doesn't mean that you can't put your car on park and reverse, It doesn't mean that, You guys can stop doing what you're doing and do right decisions, and actually make your family proud and make yourself proud at the end of the day, And for the last article that I'm going to read, it's about Tustin's first gang unit, right? The gang member sauntered into the middle of the street, flapping his hands in the air like a bird, shouting obscenities, challenging the crew in the car in front of him. He was a member of a gang called Southside Santa Ana, and he had a gun in his right hand. In front of him was a light blue 1985 Cadillac, which, until it had been confiscated, had once been a load car used by dealers to transport drugs. Unbeknownst to the gang member, the Cadillac was full of Tustin police officers, 5 of them to be exact. The gang member had picked a fight with the first ever gang unit in the history of the Tustin Police Department. They were Sergeant Joe Stickles and Police Officer Jeff Blair, Todd Bullock, Mike Clessery, and Mike Lemirox. When he saw it was the police, the gang member ran, but they caught him, arrested him, and took his gun. It was July of 1996, the year gang-related crime began exploding in Tustin. Crime was through the roof, Blair said. Those were the hot years. And over the next 5 years, they would become a wildly successful policing team. They have years and years of statistics that show just how effective they were, but one statistic above all others stands out. In the late 1990s, Tustin streets were regularly roamed by Deuce Trey Crips, Southside Santa Ana, Los Wickeds, Barrio Brown Revolution, Maniacs, Laurel Hood Tustin, Los Crooks, Nut Hood Crips, Watergate Crips, Barrio Rascals, Alley Boys, and Pasadena Barrios Locos, among others. Most of these gangs no longer exist in Tustin today. The corner of Pasadena and McFadden Avenues was called Killer Corner because in one calendar year, a murder had been committed on each corner of that intersection. The Tustin Police Department didn't have a gang unit until after Thien Minh Lai, a scholar with degrees from UCLA and Georgetown University, was stabbed to death by a white supremacist gang member on the Tustin High School tennis courts. That crime was such a tragic event in the city that Blair and Bullock's proposal for a 2-man team to tackle street gangs was bolstered into a 4-man team with a sergeant. A look at nearly 2 decades of crime statistics reveals that Tustin's Part 1 crimes, homicide, rape, robbery, assault, burglary, larceny, arson, and auto theft, hit their peak in 1998 when 2,424 were reported. Last year, as a way of comparison, 1,482. Part 1 crimes were reported in Tustin. The Tustin police have made a huge dent in crime since their peak crime years, and the first gang unit is one way they got started. Reports from the late 1990s show the gang unit confiscated 9 guns and gang members' arrests in 1 month. Today, 2 guns confiscated in gang arrests is a big month. They still call what happened during those early years the magic of the gang unit. In other words, fortunate stuff always seemed to happen, like the time Blair was having a nice conversation with a gang member who had his hands in his pockets. During the conversation, the gang member luckily revealed he had a gun pointed at Blair in his pocket of his coat. Blair was able to convince the gang member to give up the gun. Or there was a time the gang unit was chasing a tagger who tossed what they thought was a spray can in the bushes. As he ran away, luckily a K9 unit was able to retrace the tagger's steps, and the dog pulled a gun out of the bushes. Or there was a time the gang unit responded to a call of shots fired in a gang fight, but when they arrived, they met 6 gang members peacefully sitting on a curb. The gang members said they haven't heard any shots. Blair snuck away and interviewed a neighbor who luckily had videotaped what had happened minutes earlier, a gun battle in the street in front of her apartment. On the videotape, one of the gang members had been shot. Bullock recognized the shooting victim from the videotape, and he was one of the gang members sitting in the curb. When Bullock returned to question the gang member, he revealed that his back was covered in blood and that he had taken a shotgun blast to the stomach. But the gang unit was never more fortunate than when they set up surveillance in an apartment on Alliance Street. As they were setting up the camera to film that night's action in a nearby alley, they heard shots fired in the distance. They quickly pressed play on their camera as gang members luckily ran straight to the spot they were filming. The gang unit watched as members of the Los Wickeds gang ran to a garage that was about 50 feet from where the camera set, opened the lock, pulled open the garage door, and revealed a cache of weapons. The gang unit pounced and arrested all of them before they could get their hands on those weapons. So as you can see, it was pretty active with the many different neighborhoods in the 90s, right? There was a lot of Crip gangs. There was a lot of Blood gangs. There was a lot of violence going on between the Crips and the Bloods back in Orange County. So with that being said, man, I'm going to end this video here. I hope you guys have a good night. Please like, comment, share, subscribe to my channel. If not, I ain't tripping. A ratos.